They say the devil wears Prada, but in Golden Hollow, he drives a Tesla and hosts book club meetings every Thursday night. I should know, I married him. My name is Jack Donovan, and I'm a defense attorney who spent 15 years defending the guilty while living with someone far worse than any of my clients. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with the morning everything changed, when I discovered that my wife Vanessa's book club wasn't discussing literature. They were auctioning off their husbands like cattle. Golden Hollow is one of those suburbs where the lawns are perfect and the marriages are not. Every house looks like it belongs in a magazine, complete with matching shutters and professionally landscaped gardens. The kind of place where neighbors smile and wave while mentally calculating your property value and judging your choice of outdoor furniture. Vanessa and I had lived here for 8 years in a colonial revival that cost more than my parents made in their entire lifetimes. We had the perfect suburban setup, successful careers, a 13-year-old daughter named Ella who inherited my sarcasm and Vanessa's intelligence, and enough money to maintain the illusion that we were living the American dream. The cracks started showing about 6 months ago. Vanessa, a senior tech manager at a Fortune 500 company, began staying out later for her book club meetings. She'd come home with wine on her breath and a secretive smile that made my lawyer instincts twitch. When I'd ask about the book they were reading, she'd give vague answers about female empowerment literature and change the subject. "You wouldn't understand, Jack," she'd say, waving her manicured hand dismissively. "It's not just about books, it's about women supporting women." I should have pressed harder, but I was buried in a complex fraud case and figured Vanessa deserved her social outlet. After all, being married to a defense attorney isn't easy. The late nights, the stress, the constant moral ambiguity that comes with the territory. If she wanted to drink wine and discuss romance novels with the neighborhood wives, who was I to complain? The first real red flag came when I found a receipt for a diamond bracelet in her purse. $2,000 at Tiffany's, purchased the same week as one of her book club meetings. When I asked about it, she claimed it was a gift from her boss for landing a major client. "Since when does corporate America give out Tiffany bracelets for closing deals?" I asked. "Since always, if you're actually good at your job," she shot back, her green eyes flashing with irritation. "Not everyone works for court-appointed defendants and insurance companies, Jack." That stung, mainly because it was partially true. My practice wasn't exactly white shoe law firm material, but it paid the bills and kept interesting people out of prison. Still, something about her explanation felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in front of a mirror. My best friend Nate, who owns a bar downtown and has the cynical wisdom that comes from listening to drunk people's problems for 20 years, started needling me about Vanessa's behavior during our weekly poker games. "You ever wonder why she's reading 50 Shades of Grey for the third time?" he asked one night, dealing cards with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd spent too many years behind a bar. I mean, how much literary analysis can you really do on Oh My? "It's a book club, not a dissertation committee," I replied. But even as I said it, I felt that familiar lawyer's intuition that something wasn't adding up. "Right, and I'm serving communion wine," Nate laughed, his weathered face creasing into familiar lines of skepticism. "Jack, I've been married 3 times. Trust me when I say that when wives start having regular meetings that don't include their husbands, somebody's getting screwed, and it ain't the book characters." I dismissed his concerns as the bitter observations of a serial divorcee, but the seed of doubt was planted. I started paying closer attention to Vanessa's routine, her phone habits, her explanations for late nights and weekend book discussions. The breakthrough came completely by accident. Vanessa had asked me to help her set up a new phone after she cracked her screen. While transferring her apps and contacts, I noticed she was part of several group chats I'd never heard her mention. Most were work-related or family groups, but one caught my attention. Golden Hollow Book Club, ladies only. "What's this one?" I asked, pointing to the chat. "Oh, that's just coordination stuff for meetings," she said quickly, reaching for the phone. "Boring logistics about who's bringing wine and where we're meeting next." But as I handed over the phone, I saw a notification pop up from the chat. The preview text made my blood run cold. Can't wait to hear how Queen V's upgrade project is going. R is definitely a step up from Vanessa snatched the phone away before I could read the rest, but the damage was done. Queen V upgrade project. R. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Vanessa slept peacefully beside me, wondering what kind of upgrade project involved someone called R, and why my wife was apparently royalty in a book club that seemed more interested in personal improvement than literature. The answer came 2 weeks later, in the most mortifying way possible. I was at my office reviewing case files and nursing my third cup of coffee when my phone buzzed with a group chat notification. That was odd. I wasn't part of any group chats except the one with my poker buddies and a family chat with my siblings that mostly consisted of my sister sharing photos of her cats. I glanced at my phone and saw that I'd been added to Golden Hollow Book Club, ladies only. My first thought was that it was a mistake. Probably Vanessa had fumbled her phone and accidentally added me while trying to add someone else. My second thought was that I should probably leave the chat immediately and tell Vanessa about the mix-up. My third thought, the one that would change everything, was that maybe I should take a quick look at what kind of books these ladies were really discussing. I opened the chat and scrolled up to see the recent messages. What I found wasn't a discussion of literature. It was a systematic evaluation and ranking of the husbands in Golden Hollow, complete with financial assessments, performance reviews, and detailed plans for what they called strategic relationship optimization. My hands started shaking as I read message after message from women I'd known for years, women who'd attended our barbecues, whose children played with Ella, who'd smiled and made small talk, while apparently conducting a cold-blooded analysis of our marriages behind our backs. Tara Morrison, whose husband Ryan owned the local gym. Honestly, if it wasn't for the business, I'd have upgraded years ago. But the cash flow is too good to walk away from. Aaron Walsh, Vanessa's supposed best friend. At least Ryan has muscles to show for it. My Dave is getting soft in all the wrong places, and his accounting firm is barely breaking even. And then I saw the messages from my wife, the woman I'd shared a bed with for 15 years, the mother of my child, discussing me like I was a stock she was considering selling. Queen V had written, Jack's practice is steady, but not spectacular. Good father, decent provider, but zero ambition. R says he could double Jack's income in his sleep. Another message from just 3 days ago. Meeting R tonight to discuss timeline. He thinks we should wait until after Ella's school year ends, make it cleaner for everyone. And then the final nail in the coffin of my marriage, posted just that morning. Ladies, I think it's time to close the book on the current chapter and start writing a new one. R and I are getting serious about making this official. I sat in my office chair, staring at my phone screen, feeling like someone had just explained that gravity was optional and the sky was actually green. 15 years of marriage, and my wife had been discussing our relationship like a quarterly earnings report with a group of women who apparently saw their husbands as assets to be managed or discarded based on performance metrics. R. Ryan Morrison. Tara's husband, the gym owner with the perfect abs and the wandering eye. I'd always thought he was a shallow idiot who spent more time looking at himself in mirrors than talking to actual people. Apparently, Vanessa saw him as an upgrade. I screenshot every message in that chat, methodically documenting the evidence like I was building a case. Which I realized I was. Not for divorce court. That would be too easy, too clean. No, this called for something more creative, more fitting for the crime. If my wife and her book club wanted to treat marriage like a business transaction, I was going to show them what happens when you try to screw over someone who makes a living exposing lies and destroying false narratives in front of audiences. I was going to give Golden Hollow a book club meeting they'd never forget. But first, I needed to make sure I understood exactly what I was dealing with. So instead of confronting Vanessa or leaving the chat, I did what any good lawyer would do. I gathered more evidence. Over the next 3 days, I became a silent observer in my own personal hell. The Golden Hollow Book Club, ladies-only chat, was more active than the New York Stock Exchange. with a constant stream of messages that revealed a level of calculated manipulation that would have impressed Machiavelli. These women had turned marriage into a science, complete with spreadsheets, performance metrics, and strategic planning sessions that would have made my MBA classmates weep with envy. They rated everything from earning potential to bedroom performance, compared notes on their husband's weaknesses, and shared tactics for maximizing their benefits while minimizing their emotional investment. Tara Morrison was apparently the group's financial analyst, updated the spreadsheet with Q2 numbers. Ryan's gym revenue is up 18%, but Dave's accounting firm lost two major clients. Aaron, honey, you might want to start exploring your options. Aaron Walsh responded with crying laughing emojis. Already on it. Met someone at the wine bar last week. Corporate lawyer, drives a BMW, no wedding ring. Doing reconnaissance. But the real revelation was watching Vanessa operate. Queen V wasn't just a participant in this group. She was the ringleader, the strategic mastermind who had apparently turned infidelity into an art form. Ladies, remember the three-phase approach, she wrote in a message that read like a military briefing. Phase 1, establish emotional distance and create justification narrative. Phase 2, secure alternative option and conduct compatibility testing. Phase 3, execute transition with maximum benefit retention. I had to admire the clinical precision of it, even as it destroyed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Vanessa had always been organized and strategic in her career. Apparently, she'd applied the same skills to her personal life. The compatibility testing phase was particularly enlightening. The women shared detailed reports on their extramarital activities, like they were reviewing restaurants on Yelp. Vanessa's updates about her meetings with R were graphic enough to make me want to burn my phone and take a shower, but clinical enough to read like performance evaluations. R continues to exceed expectations in all categories, she wrote, after what I now realized was not a book club meeting but a hotel rendezvous. Physical compatibility excellent, financial projections promising, integration potential high. Recommend proceeding to Phase 3 pending final logistics review. Final logistics review. She was talking about ending our marriage like it was a corporate restructuring. The most sickening part was reading how they justified their actions. These weren't women trapped in abusive relationships or marriages that had died natural deaths. They were bored, entitled suburbanites who had decided that their husbands were underperforming assets that needed to be replaced with better models. We deserve to be happy, Tara wrote in response to someone expressing mild guilt about her affair. We've given the best years of our lives to these men, supported their dreams, raised their children. If they can't step up and be the partners we need, that's not our fault. Vanessa's response was even more chilling. Exactly. We're not victims. We're CEOs of our own lives. And sometimes CEOs have to make tough decisions about personnel changes. Personnel changes, that's what 15 years of marriage and a daughter together had been reduced to, a personnel change. But the real gut punch came when I saw them discussing Ella. My daughter, their children, were apparently just another factor in their strategic calculations. The kids adapt faster than you think, wrote someone named Jennifer, whom I vaguely remembered as being married to a dentist. My therapist says children are actually happier when their parents are authentic and fulfilled, even if it means family restructuring. Family restructuring. These women had a euphemism for everything. Vanessa's response made me want to throw my phone across the room. Ella's at a good age for transition, old enough to understand that people grow apart, young enough to adapt to new family dynamics. R is great with kids. He coaches Little League. She had already introduced our daughter to her boyfriend. The man she was planning to replace me with was coaching Ella's softball team, and I had been completely oblivious. I sat in my office surrounded by case files and legal briefs and realized that I had been living in a completely fabricated reality. While I was working late to pay for our mortgage and Ella's private school tuition, Vanessa was systematically dismantling our family and shopping for my replacement. The breaking point came when I saw a message thread about the logistics of their deception. They had it down to a science. Alibis, cover stories, even a rotation system so none of them were missing from their families too often. Book Club Thursdays are perfect cover, Aaron wrote. Husbands expect us to be gone for 3 hours. Gives plenty of time for activities plus decompression. Wine bar Fridays work well too, added Tara. Tell them it's girls' night, meet the guys there. Everyone thinks we're just being social. And then Vanessa, my wife, the mother of my child, added the detail that made me realize this wasn't just infidelity, it was psychological warfare. The key is making them think it was their idea to give us space. Jack actually suggested I needed more social time with female friends. I almost felt bad about how easy it was. Almost felt bad. Almost. I had been played so completely, so thoroughly, that I'd actually encouraged my own cuckolding. Every time I told Vanessa she should go out with her friends, every time I said I was happy she had found a social outlet, every time I praised her for maintaining female friendships, I had been unknowingly facilitating my own humiliation. But here's the thing about being a defense attorney. You learn to think strategically under pressure. You learn to take devastating information and figure out how to use it to your advantage. And most importantly, you learn that the best defense is often a good offense. These women thought they were playing chess, while their husbands were playing checkers. They had no idea that one of those husbands made a living outmaneuvering people who thought they were smarter than everyone else in the room. I started planning my counterattack, but first, I needed to understand the full scope of the conspiracy. So I kept reading, kept documenting, kept building my case. The chat revealed that this wasn't a recent development. It had been going on for over a year. The book club had started innocently enough, but had gradually evolved into something much more sinister under Vanessa's leadership. She had systematically recruited women who were dissatisfied with their marriages and turned their discontent into a coordinated campaign of deception. They had rules, protocols, even a buddy system to provide alibis for each other. It was like a suburban fight club, except instead of punching each other, they were systematically destroying their families. The most disturbing part was how they talked about their husbands. Not with anger or hatred, which would have at least indicated some emotional investment, but with cold, calculating assessment. We were problems to be solved, obstacles to be managed, assets to be liquidated. Dave's been asking questions about the book club, Aaron wrote. Thinks we're spending too much money on wine. Might need to scale back appearances until I'm ready for phase 3. Tell him you're exploring book club merchandise, Vanessa replied. Branded wine glasses, tote bags, that kind of thing. Men tune out when you start talking about accessories. They had an answer for everything, a strategy for every contingency. Except one. They had no idea that their target had been reading every word of their battle plans. I spent the rest of the week documenting everything, taking screenshots, building a comprehensive record of their activities. But I also started paying attention to the other husbands in our neighborhood, the men who were being systematically betrayed by women they trusted. Dave Walsh, walking his dog every morning, completely unaware that his wife was already interviewing his replacement. Ryan Morrison, well, Ryan was part of the problem. But even he didn't realize that Tara was using him as much as he was using her. There were at least 6 other husbands who were being actively deceived, and probably twice that many, who were being evaluated for potential personnel changes. These were good men for the most part. Flawed, certainly, we all are. But they were working hard, raising their children, trying to be good husbands and fathers. They deserved to know what was really happening in their marriages. More importantly, they deserved the chance to fight back. The plan that began forming in my mind was simple in concept, but devastating in execution. If these women wanted to treat their marriages like business transactions, I was going to audit their books in the most public way possible. But timing was everything. I needed to wait for the perfect moment, when the maximum number of people would witness the revelation, and when the fallout would be most complete. That moment came sooner than I expected, in the form of Golden Hollow's annual neighborhood barbecue. The Golden Hollow annual summer barbecue was scheduled for the Saturday before Labor Day, a tradition that brought together all the families in our subdivision for an afternoon of grilled food, cold beer, and the kind of forced socializing that makes suburban life both comforting and suffocating. This year's event was being hosted by the Morrisons, Ryan and Tara, in their backyard, which featured an elaborate outdoor kitchen and enough seating for 50 people. It was the perfect venue for what I had planned, a captive audience of neighbors who knew each other well enough to appreciate the full scope of what they were about to witness. The morning of the barbecue, Vanessa spent extra time getting ready, choosing an outfit that I now realized was designed to impress someone other than me. She wore a sundress that showed off her figure and jewelry I didn't remember buying her, including that mysterious Tiffany bracelet. "You look nice," I said, watching her apply lipstick in our bedroom mirror. "Thank you," she replied, not meeting my eyes. "I want to look good for the photos. You know how these neighborhood events end up all over social media." Social media. Right. I was sure that's exactly what she was thinking about. Ella was spending the weekend with my sister, which meant Vanessa and I would be attending the barbecue alone, the perfect setup for what I had planned. No innocent bystanders, no need to worry about protecting our daughter from the fallout. We walked the 3 blocks to the Morrison house together, making small talk about the weather and the neighbors, playing our roles as the happy couple one last time. Vanessa was relaxed, confident, probably looking forward to seeing Ryan in a social setting where she could flirt without raising suspicions. She had no idea that I had spent the last week preparing for this moment like it was the closing argument of my career. The backyard was already crowded when we arrived, filled with the familiar faces of Golden Hollow's finest. I saw Dave Walsh manning the beer cooler, completely oblivious to his wife's plans for family restructuring. There was Jennifer, the dentist's wife, chatting with other members of the book club like they were discussing actual literature instead of coordinating the systematic destruction of their marriages. And there was Ryan Morrison, our host, working the grill with the kind of casual confidence that had apparently caught my wife's attention. He was everything I wasn't: tall, muscular, tanned from hours in his gym, with the kind of easy charm that made people overlook his obvious intellectual limitations. "Jack, Vanessa," Ryan called out when he saw us, waving a spatula in greeting. "Glad you could make it. Beer's in the cooler, food'll be ready in about 20 minutes. "Thanks for hosting," Vanessa replied, and I caught the way her smile lingered just a beat too long, the way her eyes held his gaze. Now that I knew what to look for, their attraction was obvious. I grabbed a beer and started working the crowd, making conversation with neighbors I'd known for years. Men who had no idea their wives were part of a conspiracy that would have impressed the CIA. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was probably the only person at the party who knew what was really going on, despite being one of the primary targets. "How's the law business, Jack?" asked Tom Bradley, a software engineer whose wife Sarah was deep in conversation with the other book club members. "Can't complain," I replied, "though I've been working on an interesting case lately. Fraud, conspiracy, that kind of thing. Amazing how people think they can get away with elaborate deceptions in the age of digital evidence." Tom laughed. "Yeah, people never learn. Everything leaves a trail these days." "Exactly," I said, taking a sip of my beer. "Screenshots, text messages, digital receipts. It's almost impossible to hide anything anymore." I was laying the groundwork, planting seeds that would make more sense in about an hour when the real show started. As the afternoon progressed, I watched the social dynamics play out with new understanding. The book club women clustered together, sharing private jokes and meaningful glances. Their husbands mingled separately, talking about work and sports and home improvement projects, completely unaware of the parallel conversations happening just a few feet away. Vanessa and Ryan were being careful, but not careful enough. I caught them exchanging looks across the yard, saw the way she found excuses to walk past the grill where he was working, noticed how he made sure to compliment her dress loudly enough for others to hear, while his eyes said something entirely different. Tara, meanwhile, was playing her role perfectly, the devoted wife hosting a neighborhood party while secretly planning her husband's replacement. She chatted with the other wives about school schedules and vacation plans, all while knowing that her marriage was a strategic alliance that would be dissolved as soon as she found a better option. The level of deception was breathtaking. These people were living completely double lives, maintaining elaborate facades while conducting psychological warfare against their own families. It would have been impressive if it wasn't so morally reprehensible. At around 4 o'clock, when the party was in full swing and everyone had had enough beer to lower their inhibitions, I decided it was time to make my move. I pulled out my phone and opened the book club group chat, scrolling to one of the most damning conversations from the previous week. Then I typed a simple message. Ladies, I just wanted to thank you all for the enlightening education about marriage, relationships, and the fine art of personnel management. As someone who was apparently underperforming in his role, I found your performance reviews particularly insightful. I hit send and watched as phones around the yard started buzzing with notifications. The effect was immediate and devastating. I watched as Vanessa pulled out her phone, saw her face go white as she read my message, saw the panic spread through the group of women like wildfire as they realized what had happened. "Oh my God," Erin whispered, loud enough for several people to hear. "Oh my God, oh my God." "What's wrong?" Dave asked, walking over to his wife with genuine concern. Tara was frantically typing on her phone, probably trying to damage control, but it was too late. I had already sent my follow-up message. For anyone interested in the full context, I'd be happy to share some highlights from the past few months of book club discussions. Did you know that marriages are apparently evaluated on quarterly performance metrics now? Fascinating stuff. And then I did something that would have made my law school professors proud. I presented my evidence to the jury. I started reading from the chat, loudly enough for everyone in the backyard to hear. The conversations about upgrade projects and personnel changes, the detailed evaluations of their husband's financial and physical performance, the strategic planning sessions for affairs and divorces. R continues to exceed expectations in all categories, I read, looking directly at Ryan, who had gone pale behind his grill. Physical compatibility excellent. Financial projections promising. The yard had gone completely silent except for my voice and the sound of beer cans hitting the ground as people dropped them in shock. Ella's at a good age for transition, I continued, my voice getting harder as I got to the parts about my daughter. Old enough to understand that people grow apart, young enough to adapt to new family dynamics. That's when Dave Walsh figured out what was happening. "Are you saying our wives have been—" He couldn't finish the sentence, but his expression said everything. "I'm saying your wives have been running a very sophisticated operation," I replied, complete with performance metrics, strategic planning, and what they like to call compatibility testing. The explosion was immediate and total. Dave confronted Erin, who tried to deny everything, until I offered to show him the screenshots. Tom Bradley demanded to see his wife's messages. Ryan tried to slip away from the grill, but Tara blocked his path, her face twisted with rage. "You bastard!" she screamed at him. "You absolute bastard! I was using you, but you thought you were using me." And then all hell broke loose. What followed was the most spectacular implosion of social order I had ever witnessed outside of a courtroom. The Golden Hollow annual summer barbecue became ground zero for the complete destruction of at least 6 marriages and the social fabric of our entire neighborhood. Dave Walsh, a mild-mannered accountant who I had never seen raise his voice above a whisper, grabbed Erin's phone and started scrolling through the chat messages, reading them aloud in a voice that got louder and more incredulous with each revelation. "Dave's bedroom performance has declined significantly over the past year," he read, his face flushing red. "Recommend exploring alternatives with better stamina and creativity." Stamina and creativity? Stamina and creativity? Erin tried to grab the phone back, but Dave held it over his head like a kid, keeping a toy away from a sibling. "You rated me like a Yelp review. You gave me 2 stars for stamina." "Dave, please, you're making a scene," Erin pleaded, looking around at the crowd of neighbors who were watching with the horrified fascination usually reserved for car accidents and reality TV shows. "I'm making a scene," Dave's voice cracked. "You've been running a secret evaluation system on our marriage, and I'm making a scene?" Meanwhile, Tom Bradley had cornered his wife Sarah near the beer cooler and was demanding to see her phone. Sarah, a petite brunette who taught kindergarten and had always seemed like the most innocent person in the neighborhood, was backing away from him with the expression of someone who had been caught embezzling from the church fund. "Tom, honey, you don't understand," she said, clutching her phone to her chest. "It wasn't serious. It was just girl talk. Just venting." "Girl talk?" Tom's voice was getting dangerously quiet, which anyone who knew him would recognize as a bad sign. "You call discussing my salary and comparing me to other men girl talk?" But the main event was happening near the grill, where Ryan Morrison was trying to explain to his wife that yes, he had been sleeping with Vanessa. But no, it wasn't serious, and actually, wasn't Tara doing the same thing with someone else? That's completely different, Tara screamed, throwing a paper plate at his head. I was strategically positioning myself for a better future. You were just thinking with your dick. How is that different? Ryan shot back, abandoning any pretense of keeping his voice down. You were cheating, I was cheating, everybody's cheating. Because I had a plan. Tara's voice reached a pitch that probably scared dogs 3 blocks away. I was making calculated decisions about my future. You were just screwing around because you could. The beautiful irony wasn't lost on me. These women had spent months planning the systematic betrayal of their husbands, but they hadn't considered what would happen when their own betrayals were exposed. They had been so focused on maintaining operational security against their husbands that they hadn't protected themselves against each other. Vanessa, meanwhile, had been trying to work her way toward the exit, probably hoping to escape before the full scope of her leadership role in the conspiracy became clear. But I wasn't about to let her slink away quietly. Leaving so soon, Queen V? I called out, using her chat nickname loud enough for everyone to hear. She froze like a deer in headlights, and I saw the exact moment she realized that her carefully constructed facade was about to be completely demolished. Jack, please, she said, turning back toward me with her hands raised in a gesture that might have been surrender or might have been an attempt to calm a dangerous animal. Can we discuss this privately? Think about Ella. Oh, I am thinking about Ella, I replied, pulling up another screenshot on my phone. I'm thinking about how you told your book club that she was at a good age for transition, and how R was great with kids because he coaches Little League. I'm thinking about how you've apparently already introduced our daughter to your boyfriend without telling me. The crowd, which had been focused on the multiple smaller dramas playing out around the yard, suddenly turned their attention to us. This was the main event, the heavyweight championship of marital destruction. You introduced Ella to him? The question came from Janet Peterson, an older woman who lived at